Donald Trump has always been known for speaking openly, sometimes saying things that many other leaders avoid. Recently, he made comments that shocked many people around the world. In a moment of unexpected honesty, he spoke about the relationship between the United States and Israel. What he said was not something new to those who pay attention, but it was surprising to hear a former US president say it so directly. Trump said out loud what many governments usually keep hidden behind closed doors. His words were not just political statements. They were a mirror showing the truth behind international policies, and Muslims around the world need to pay close attention. For decades, the US has supported Israel strongly, militarily, financially, and politically. This support has remained solid, no matter who is in the White House. But Trump, in his usual bold way, admitted that this support is not really about peace or justice. It's about power, influence, and control. He said that the US backs Israel because it serves American interests in the Middle East. In other words, this relationship is about strategy, not morality. When Trump admitted this, he peeled back the mask that many governments wear. He made it clear that political decisions are rarely about doing the right thing, they're about gaining advantages. He also spoke about how Israel has powerful influence in American politics. He pointed out that many politicians are afraid to criticize Israel, even when innocent people suffer, because they fear losing support, donations, or votes. This means that people in power sometimes ignore justice just to keep their political careers safe. Trump's comments revealed the fear and pressure that exists behind the scenes in Washington. These are not easy truths to hear, but they are necessary. For Muslims, this matters deeply. Many Muslim countries and communities have suffered for years because of these hidden deals and alliances. From Palestine to Syria, from Iraq to Yemen, Muslim lives have often been treated like numbers on a political map. Trump's words reminded the world that justice is not always the main concern in global politics. He reminded us that many decisions are made with cold calculation, not compassion. When leaders speak the truth, even by accident, it becomes a chance for people to wake up and see the world as it really is. Trump also talked about how American media often protects certain narratives. He suggested that people only hear one side of the story when it comes to Israel and Palestine. This is why Muslims and people of conscience need to look beyond mainstream headlines. We must ask deeper questions. We must listen to the voices of those who suffer, and not only to the voices of those in power. We must recognize that truth is sometimes hidden on purpose. What Trump said may not have been perfect, and he is far from a flawless figure. But in this case, his blunt honesty opened a door. It gave people a chance to think differently and to see how the system really works. Muslims need to hear this because it affects their brothers and sisters across the world. It affects how their stories are told and how their pain is judged. It affects how their rights are either respected or ignored. Donald Trump's statement about the United States' support for Israel being driven by strategic interests rather than justice or peace is a powerful and important truth. For many years, people around the world have seen the US as a strong ally of Israel. This alliance is well known, but the reasons behind it are often hidden or not discussed openly. Trump's honesty sheds light on why this support exists and what it really means. It is not simply because the US believes Israel is always right, or because it wants to promote fairness in the region. Instead, the support is deeply connected to America's own goals and power in the Middle East. The Middle East is a very important region in global politics because of its natural resources, especially oil, and its strategic location between continents. Countries around the world pay close attention to what happens there because it can affect the economy, security, and balance of power everywhere. For the United States, having a strong partner like Israel in this region means having a base of influence. This influence allows America to protect its interests, monitor other powerful countries, and maintain a presence in an area that is often unstable. Trump made it clear that this political alliance is more about these practical benefits than about doing what is right for all the people living there. When leaders speak about peace or justice in the Middle East, many assume they are talking about helping all people find fairness and safety. But Trump's words remind us that these ideals can sometimes be set aside when bigger interests are involved. Supporting Israel gives the US advantages in military strength, intelligence sharing, and economic cooperation. It helps America compete with other countries like Russia, China, and Iran, who also want influence in the region. So the support is often about maintaining power rather than solving deep-rooted problems. This does not mean that all actions taken by the US or Israel are wrong, but it does explain why sometimes policies seem unfair or biased. For example, when innocent Palestinian families suffer or when their homes are taken, the US often remains silent or even supports Israel's decisions. This silence is not necessarily because America ignores human rights, but because it chooses to protect the strategic ally. Trump's admission brings this reality into the open, showing that foreign policy is complicated and sometimes harsh. Understanding this point is important because it changes how people view global events. It is not enough to just hear about peace talks or condemnations in the news. One must look deeper and see the political games behind the scenes. Leaders do not always act on what is fair or moral. They act on what benefits their country and their power. Trump's words are a reminder that truth can be uncomfortable, but it is necessary to face it if real change is ever going to happen. For Muslims and others who care about justice in the Middle East, knowing this truth means being more aware and prepared. It means recognizing that international politics are often driven by self-interest and power struggles. It means understanding why certain issues remain unresolved, despite many promises and talk. And it means realizing that real progress requires people to demand fairness and truth, even when the official story seems different. In the end, Trump's honest words invite all of us to look beyond slogans and headlines. They invite us to think critically about why countries make certain alliances and how these choices affect millions of lives. It is a call to stay informed, to seek the truth, and to remember that justice must be more than just a political tool. It must be a real goal that includes everyone. The influence of Israel on American politics is a reality that many people do not fully understand. But it plays a major role in shaping US policies in the Middle East. Donald Trump pointed this out clearly, saying that many politicians are afraid to criticize Israel because of the power that pro-Israel groups hold in the United States. This fear affects decisions at the highest levels of government and keeps certain truths from being spoken openly. Understanding this influence helps explain why the US continues to support Israel, even when there are serious concerns about fairness and human rights in the region. One of the main reasons Israel has such influence in American politics is because of powerful lobbying groups. These groups work hard to promote Israel's interests in Washington. They donate money to political campaigns, organize events, and persuade lawmakers to support policies that benefit Israel. When politicians want to win elections or stay in power, they listen to groups that can provide financial support and help them gain vote. This means that criticizing Israel or questioning its policies can be risky. Politicians worry that if they do, they might lose this support, which can hurt their chances of getting elected or re-elected. This influence is not just about money, though. It also comes from a network of relationships between Israeli leaders and American officials. Many people in government, media, and business have close ties to Israel or feel a strong cultural or religious connection. These relationships create an environment where supporting Israel becomes the default position. Speaking out against Israel's actions, especially in regard to Palestinians, is often seen as controversial or even dangerous. This creates a kind of silence where real discussions about justice and peace are limited. Because of this strong influence, many policies that affect the Middle East are made without fully considering the consequences for Palestinians or other groups. For example, the US often uses its power in the United Nations to block resolutions that criticize Israel. It provides billions of dollars in military aid to Israel every year. It supports Israel's right to defend itself, even when that defense causes harm to civilians. These policies are shaped by political pressure inside the US government, where many politicians do not want to lose support from powerful pro-Israel groups. This situation creates a difficult environment for those who want to speak honestly about the conflict. Journalists, activists, and politicians who criticize Israel can face backlash or accusations of being anti-Semitic. This is a serious problem because it stops open and honest debate. Without honest discussion, it becomes harder to find solutions that respect the rights of all people involved. Trump's comments expose this pressure and fear that exist within American politics, making it clear that many decisions are influenced more by political survival than by seeking justice. For Muslims and others around the world who care about peace and fairness, understanding this political influence is very important. It helps explain why some governments seem unwilling to challenge Israel's policies, even when they cause suffering. It also shows why the situation in Palestine remains unresolved, despite years of international attention. When political leaders are afraid to speak the truth, the people who suffer the most are those caught in the conflict. Trump's bluntness about this issue serves as a reminder that power in politics often comes from hidden forces. It reminds people to look carefully at who benefits from certain policies and who stays silent. This awareness can motivate people to demand more transparency and courage from their leaders. It can encourage citizens to support politicians who are willing to stand for truth and justice, even when it is difficult. In the end, the influence of Israel in American politics is a reality that shapes much of what happens in the Middle East. Trump's honesty about this issue invites people to understand the political pressures that keep the current situation in place. By knowing this, Muslims and others can better understand the challenges facing their communities and work towards a future where fairness and justice are truly possible. Political decisions, especially in international relations, are often shaped by power and control rather than by fairness or morality. Donald Trump's comments highlight this harsh reality. Leaders and governments make choices based on what will keep or increase their influence, protect their interests, and strengthen their position on the global stage. This means that ideas like justice, peace, and human rights can sometimes take a backseat to practical concerns about power. Understanding this helps explain why some conflicts continue for many years without resolution, and why certain groups or nations seem to be treated unfairly. When a country makes a political decision, it is not simply about what is right or wrong. It is about protecting its own survival and growth. This is especially true for powerful countries like the United States. They want to maintain their dominance in the world, and that means building alliances that help them achieve their goals. Supporting Israel is an example of this. The US government sees Israel as a strategic partner in a region that is vital for global politics and resources. Because of this, the US often backs Israel's actions, even when those actions harm others or are seen as unfair by many people around the world. This focus on power and control means that politicians sometimes ignore the suffering of ordinary people. When policies are made to benefit a country's influence, the lives of millions can be affected without proper consideration. For example, many Palestinians have faced displacement, violence, and restrictions because of decisions made by governments seeking to protect their own interests. These decisions are often justified by national security or strategic reasons, but they come at a high human cost. Trump's words remind us that these decisions are not just mistakes or accidents. They are part of a larger system where power often rules over justice. Another consequence of this focus on power is that international rules and laws are not always applied equally. Powerful countries and their allies may break agreements or ignore international opinions without facing serious consequences. Meanwhile, weaker countries or groups are often punished more harshly. This double standard weakens the idea of fairness in global politics. It creates resentment and mistrust, which makes it even harder to solve conflicts peacefully. This reality can be discouraging because it shows how difficult it is to change the system. However, knowing this truth is important because it helps people see beyond simple explanations or hopeful promises. It encourages people to look deeper and question the motives behind political actions. It also highlights the need for greater accountability and transparency in government decisions. For Muslims and all those who seek justice, understanding that political decisions are driven by power means recognizing why it is important to raise their voice. It means not accepting unfair situations silently. When governments prioritize control over fairness, the only way to create real change is through awareness, pressure, and action from the. This is why activism, education, and unity are so crucial in efforts to support those who suffer from injustice. Trump's admission, even if unexpected, is a reminder that the world is often governed by realpolitik, a system where practical interests outweigh ideals. This knowledge should inspire people to be more critical of the information they receive and to demand policies that respect human rights and dignity. It should also motivate leaders to remember that true strength comes not only from power, but from fairness and respect for all people. In the end, political decisions based on power and control explain much of the conflict and suffering we see today. Trump's honesty helps uncover this uncomfortable truth, pushing people to face the reality of global politics. By understanding this, Muslims and others can better navigate the complex world they live in and work toward a future where justice is not overshadowed by the pursuit of power. Donald Trump's statement about biased narratives in mainstream media concerning Israel and Palestine brings attention to a serious issue that many people are not fully aware of. The media plays a huge role in shaping how the world understands conflicts and political situations. When the story presented is one-sided or incomplete, it affects public opinion and influences how governments respond. Trump pointed out that the media often protects certain interests and does not tell the whole truth, especially when it comes to Israel. This has deep consequences for Muslims and others who want to see justice and peace in the Middle East. Mainstream media refers to large news organizations that have wide audiences. These include TV channels, newspapers, and popular online platforms. Because they reach so many people, the way they report news shapes the ideas and beliefs of millions. When a major event happens, people usually rely on these sources to understand what is going on. However, these news organizations can sometimes have biases, intentional or unintentional, that affect their reporting. In the case of Israel and Palestine, many media outlets tend to present Israel's side more favorably. This can mean highlighting Israel's security concerns and challenges while minimizing or ignoring the suffering and rights of Palestinians. One reason for this biased coverage is political pressure. Media companies often have relationships with powerful groups and advertisers that influence what they report. There is also a fear of being accused of bias or even anti-Semitism if they criticize Israel too openly. This fear can lead to self-censorship, where journalists avoid certain topics or soften their language to avoid controversy. The result is that audiences receive a version of the story that favors Israel and limits criticism of its action. Trump's remarks expose this hidden influence and encourage people to question what they hear and read in the media. The consequences of biased media coverage are serious. When people do not get the full story, they may support policies or leaders without understanding the full impact on those involved. For Palestinians, this means their pain, displacement, and daily struggles are often invisible or underreported. The world might see protests as violent riots instead of desperate calls for justice. Attacks on civilians may be downplayed or justified in the name of security. This one-sided narrative makes it harder for people outside the region to empathize and for governments to act fairly. For Muslims everywhere, understanding this media bias is crucial. It shows why many good people outside the Middle East may not fully grasp the realities on the ground. It also explains why international support for Palestine is not as strong as it could be. When the media hides or distorts the truth, it creates barriers to understanding and solidarity. Muslims and their allies must seek information from diverse sources, including independent journalists, activists, and voices from within the region. This broader view helps reveal the complexity and human cost of the conflict. Trump's statement also serves as a call to be critical consumers of information. It reminds people not to accept everything they hear at face value. Instead, they should question the source, look for missing perspectives, and try to learn from multiple viewpoints. This approach is important not only for understanding the Israel-Palestine conflict, but for all news and information in today's world, where misinformation can spread easily. In the end, the media has enormous power to shape opinions and influence political decisions. Trump's words expose how this power can be used to protect certain interests and silence others. For Muslims and all those who seek justice, Recognizing this bias is the first step toward demanding fairer and more truthful reporting. Only with honest media coverage can the world begin to understand the true nature of the conflict and work toward real solutions that respect the rights and dignity of all people involved. The exposure of the political realities behind the Israel-Palestine conflict is extremely important for Muslims worldwide, because it sheds light on the hidden forces that shape the lives of millions in the Middle East. Donald Trump's remarks revealing these truths remind Muslims that understanding the real political dynamics is essential for protecting their communities, supporting justice, and working toward peace. This knowledge empowers Muslims to be more aware of what is happening beyond the surface and to engage in conversations and actions that reflect a deeper understanding of the situation. For many Muslims, the Israel-Palestine issue is not just a distant political conflict, it is deeply personal and emotional. Palestinians are predominantly Muslim, and their suffering, displacement, and struggles for rights have touched Muslims around the world. They see the injustice and want to support their brothers and sisters in Palestine. However, without understanding the true political landscape, it is difficult to grasp why solutions have been so elusive and why the international community often fails to act decisively. One of the biggest challenges is that much of the information circulating about the conflict is influenced by political agendas, biased media, and misinformation. When people only hear one side of the story or receive distorted information, their ability to make informed decisions and support meaningful change is limited. Trump's exposure encourages Muslims to look beyond mainstream narratives and seek out diverse sources of information. This includes listening to voices from within Palestine, independent journalists, scholars, and activists who offer perspectives that might be ignored or suppressed elsewhere. By understanding the political interests behind the scenes, such as how the United States prioritizes its alliance with Israel for strategic reasons, Muslims can better comprehend why certain policies are made and why peace efforts often stall. This awareness helps prevent frustration and confusion when governments or international organizations do not take strong action against injustice. It also motivates Muslims to engage in advocacy and education, pushing for policies that truly respect human rights and dignity. Knowing the truth about the political dynamics also strengthens Muslim communities' ability to stand united. When people understand the complexity of the situation, they can support each other with clearer goals and realistic expectations. It encourages solidarity not only with Palestinians but also with all oppressed peoples, fostering a broader commitment to justice and human rights worldwide. Moreover, this exposure challenges Muslims to think critically about the role of global powers and how international politics affect their lives. It is a reminder that the world is often driven by interests and alliances that do not always align with morality or fairness. This understanding can inspire Muslims to focus on empowerment through education, political participation, and community building, ensuring their voices are heard on the global stage. Trump's honesty, despite its controversial nature, can be a starting point for more open conversations within Muslim communities and beyond. It invites Muslims to ask difficult questions, seek deeper knowledge, and not settle for simple answers. This process of awareness is crucial for developing strategies that address not just the symptoms of conflict but also the root causes. In addition, the exposure serves as a warning against complacency. It reminds Muslims that true peace and justice require constant effort and vigilance. It calls on individuals and communities to remain informed, united, and active in demanding fair treatment for Palestinians and all marginalized groups affected by the conflict. Ultimately, the truth about the political realities behind the Israel-Palestine situation empowers Muslims to be more than just passive observers. It encourages them to become informed advocates and agents of change. Understanding the power structures at play helps Muslims work toward a future where justice is not overshadowed by political interests and where peace is built on genuine respect for the rights of all people. By embracing this knowledge, Muslims worldwide can strengthen their role in shaping a more just and peaceful world, ensuring that their voices contribute meaningfully to the global call for fairness and human dignity.